name is Linda Shelly, and I work as Director for Latin America with Mennonite Mission Network. And I'm happy to have with me today Rebekah York. Becca, you arrived in Colombia in January, and we're off to a great start, getting to know people, studying Spanish, and becoming involved in your assignment with the Colombian Seminary. And I was really glad to be able to visit you in March, just as the pandemic was beginning to change everyone's plans. Can you share with us briefly how your life changed?
Yeah. Like you said, I got here, and within 2 months, basically, we were in economic lockdown, in complete quarantine. And so all the little communities that I had been a part of, that I had been fostering, suddenly shifted to be more online through virtual platforms like Zoom or Google Meets. The biggest shift for me, thinking back to March, was the shift in the Spanish classes, because I had gotten so used to, being with 2 or 3 other people who were learning Spanish, and interacting with them, or trying to interact with them in Spanish, even though we both would normally speak in English. We were trying to put into practice what we were learning. And all of a sudden, all of that was virtual, or online rather. And so, just getting accustomed to having a 2-hour class each morning and then studying in the afternoon was for sure an adjustment. And then also, same thing with the seminary. Any meetings that we would have, or if we needed to talk to each other, we now had to do a WhatsApp call or a Zoom meeting if there was more than one person, because we weren't all in the seminary together. And so, just everything shifted. There was no more ability to meet in person. And I think another aspect of it is that even within Colombia, I had started making friends with people who weren't necessarily from Bogotá, but were from surrounding cities. And so once the pandemic hit, they all went back to their home city to be with their families. And so, even just the people around me, that changed as well. So it was pretty drastic, but there are some good things about it as well, because I got to spend pretty much 4 months intensely studying the language, which I wouldn't have had otherwise. And so I think that's been a really good part of this quarantine.
Yeah. And what's the situation like now in Bogotá with COVID? And how are the churches responding?
Yeah. So right now, actually about 2 weeks ago, our strict quarantine was lifted on end of August, beginning of September. We got through the peak of the virus. And so now in Bogotá, we're entering what they're calling the new reality. And so we're not confined to our homes anymore. We are allowed to go out for walks. We are allowed to go out and be with other people. The parks are opening up again. Certain restaurants are opening up on extended weekend schedules. And so Bogotá is trying to come out of this very intense lockdown, this very intense quarantine situation, and, kind of stimulate the economy and recover some of what was lost over the past 6 months. The virus is still here. The virus is still a reality, and many people are still suffering. But the fact of the matter is that they're seeing that they need to start making steps to open up some of the economy and provide jobs for people that have been jobless for months now. And then your second part of the question was how are churches responding? I think I'll answer that in 2 different ways. One, in the sense that the churches are responding to the situation with their communities, with their congregants, and then they're also responding outside of their church walls in the community. And so on the one hand, you have churches who back in March pretty much immediately went to Zoom platforms for church. And so we've we continued that throughout the 6 months of lockdown, and we are continuing that now, as we are still not allowed to congregate together in person. And so, yeah, churches have their services online, their Sunday schools online, and any prayer meetings or committee meetings that were active before the pandemic also switched to an online platform. And at least the church that I take part in here, they added a couple of prayer meetings throughout the week just to give people a space to process together, to be together, to pray together. And so, yeah, it was really surprising actually how quickly the churches, shifted to Zoom or Google Meets or Hangouts or any other platform like that. So that's been really encouraging. And then the other part of the question is the response to the churches and the society in Bogotá specifically. And I think part of the reality that the pandemic has brought to the surface is all of the social injustices and all of the problems that were here in society, but that something like a global pandemic and intense quarantine and lockdown would only uncover and lay bare for all to see. And so, yeah, this current reality has exacerbated things like hunger. And so that's one very specific way that the church here is responding. They every 2 weeks, they have this process of packaging up food and then handing it out to both Colombians who have been displaced or have lost their jobs or are in need of food, and then also Venezuelans who have decided to stay here or can't get back to Venezuela. And they hand out food to these people every 2 weeks. And that's something that the church here has been involved in even before the pandemic, but it's only become a more active part of their witness because of the pandemic. And I've actually been able to get involved in some of that work, which has been really good, even though it's difficult and it's hard to see the reality of people suffering and know that it's even more so now. But it kind of makes you feel like you're doing something in the midst of really trying times. And so that's just one way that they're actively responding to the needs of the society.
That's great to hear how the churches are continuing their own services and connections and also reaching out within the broader society. I'm glad that you're able to be a part of that too. And I know the Colombian Mennonite Church for many years has been in the forefront of work for justice and peace in their country. Recently, there's been a resurgence of violence. And what are you hearing from the church leaders, and what is their prayer for their country?
That's a good question. Yeah, so the past couple months, we have seen quite an intense resurgence of violence on the coastal and territorial areas of Colombia, but also here in Bogotá. And something that I've noticed about the churches here is that they are very ready to denounce violence and to write a letter or to write a Facebook post saying, as the church, we denounce this, we reject this, and we commit to something else. But it's not just a matter of rejecting or a matter of saying, this is wrong, this is not good. It's also what I've noticed and observed. It's also a matter of proclaiming something else, proclaiming that another reality is possible. And so, even in the midst of economic turmoil, of increased systemic and direct violence, and in the midst of a pandemic where we're all inside, we're not allowed to see each other, we're not allowed to be with each other, I've still seen this desire from the churches and the Mennonite community here, this desire to proclaim that another reality is possible, to continue to work for the kingdom, to continue to witness for peace and justice. And even though it's hard, like there's still that commitment. And it's really humbling and really, really encouraging for me as an outsider, and as someone who can, focus a lot on the negative aspects of the world, and the injustices, like to see their commitment and to see them continuing to pray for peace, continuing to proclaim the kingdom here, but not yet. It's a powerful witness.
Thank you. Your role is with the seminary. In the past, the seminary brought people together to study in a classroom. And I understand that interest in starting online classes emerged as a way to more fully include students outside of Bogotá. But then COVID made it more attractive for everyone. How is the new online program going?
Yeah, COVID definitely almost forced the seminary classes to go online, in a good way, I would say, because I have been very encouraged by the amount of people who have signed up to take classes for the first semester at the seminary. So we started classes back in August, the beginning of August, and we're offering 4 classes right now. All of them are online. And we have about 20 people who connect each night that those classes are offered. And they're not just people here in Bogotá. They're people from the surrounding areas, like outside of Bogotá, Soacha area, different cities within Colombia, Medellin and Cali, and Ibagué too. And then we also have some people connecting from Ecuador. And so just to see the rich diversity of all the students and all the people who are connecting, it's encouraging, because not only do we have people from different areas of Colombia, but we also have different ages, different walks of life, different church backgrounds, all within the Anabaptist tradition. But so it's been very encouraging for me to see so many people with this desire to study theology, to deepen their critical thinking skills and their contextual responses to where they find themselves, but from a very theological perspective, from the perspective of the church as the agent of change in society. And so, I think it's going very well, but I'm an outsider, and but it is encouraging, to be sure.
Yeah. Well, that is great. I'm really glad to see that the seminary program is off to a good start, and I anticipate that's going to grow as more people learn about the opportunity and see that they can study from wherever they are, and that is such an advantage with the online education. Mm-hmm. Thinking about the seminary, what do you hope to see as the role of the seminary in the life of the Colombia Mennonite Church?
So this is something that I've been thinking about a lot too, especially in these times of quarantine, when I've had a lot more time to think about what's the purpose of theological education, why study theology, especially in these very difficult times. Like, who would want to study theology and take the time to go through that process? But I think the way that question is worded is really important, because it puts the emphasis on the life of the Colombia Mennonite Church. And there's this Cuban-American historian and theologian named Justo Gonzalez, who basically says that it is part of the mission and witness of the church to be involved in theological education, to be involved in informing people, in instilling within their congregation a desire and an excitement for theological study and formation. And I really appreciate that, and I think that idea has a very important place in society today, because it's not just about studying theology in an academic institution, but it's about having this excitement and this wonderment instilled within you that causes you to keep asking questions, that causes you to maybe continue your formation in an academic setting, but it's not solely the academic settings where that happens. It's also the churches. And I see that reality in Colombia. I see the Colombian Mennonite churches here really focusing on that spiritual formation and that that desire within people to keep asking questions and to learn more. And so, I really hope that the seminary can be a place as an institution of the church, but that it can be a place where people are continually surprised by this strange new world of the Bible, and the vision that it has for a kingdom based in peace and justice. And I guess that's my hope for the seminary, is that it can be that place of continued wonder and excitement that people already have within them.
Yeah, I like that, thinking about it as a place of continued wonder and excitement. There's so much to discover in biblical theological studies. Thinking about the students, what is your prayer for the students?
Yeah, I just have to first say that it's such an honor to be able to interact with the students online. As much as I wish that I could be interacting with them personally and having conversations after class or during class or whatever it may be, it really is an honor to be a part of this journey with them. And I guess my prayer would be for every single person that takes one class or the entire program that the seminary offers, that they would be amazed again and again by the gospel that is abundant life, that they would continue to find new ways of understanding what the gospel means in their context, new ways of understanding the biblical context and what that means for their context today. And I think that this process and this awe and excitement and their continued encounters with the text will really only deepen and further their ministerial skills and their educational careers. And I also hope that the seminary can be a place of safety, of a very sacred space where people who come together, they're committed to an Anabaptist perspective of the nonviolent way of Jesus, and that they can be encouraged from and by each other. Because in the context of Colombia, where they've lived through intense violence, and now we're seeing a resurgence of violence, not just in the territories, but also in the city, in Bogotá, that is, it can be hard to remain hopeful and to remain committed to this lifestyle of nonviolent love and action. And so I've already seen in some of the classes that people are being encouraged, and that they are asking difficult questions. They are bringing their entire beings, their entire selves to their academic career, but they're also encouraging each other, and they're also wanting to remain committed to this. And so, I think another prayer for the students would be just that they would be able to continue to witness that this nonviolent love, this nonviolent action is a very powerful tool for transformation, and one of the only ones that we can use in this world when it's filled with so much injustice and so much violence.
Yeah, that's great. I think you've already partially answered this question, but what gives you hope in Colombia?
Oh, hope. That can be a very difficult topic to discuss, especially in these times, especially when it's easier for me to pick out just what needs to be judged or what needs to be changed or what needs to, what needs judgment. But I think I find hope, like I've said, in the commitment to this witness, and that it's not just, I think I said this earlier, it's not just a rejection or a denouncement of violence, but it's actually like a proclamation of something. We are like the church here, and together I join with the Colombian Mennonite Church in saying there is something different. There is something, there is an alternative that we can live into and out of. And we are going to proclaim the good news, to proclaim the gospel, which is abundant life. And we're going to live that out. And yeah, I think for me as someone who I've become very comfortable in sitting with some of the heavier questions and some of the heaviness of the world. But I think what I've learned, especially during these past 6 months, is that I can sit there, but with an eye towards the kingdom of God, towards that which is here, but also that which is coming. And so it's an eschatological hope, but it's also very real here. And yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Becca. It's been really good talking with you, and we're very glad that you're in Colombia. And know that this, the beginning of your term is not what any of us expected, and yet you're doing a great job in the midst of a challenging situation, and just really appreciate the way you're listening and learning and in communication, relationship with people, and able to experience and be a part of the witness of the church in these challenging times. So thank you very much.
It's an honor to be here.